Hello, welcome to the Manual Handling Collective. I'm your host, Simone Hepburn. I'm a physio and manual handling educator, and I'm passionate about injury prevention. This is a podcast where I speak frankly with the brain's trust of manual handling and other amazing industry leaders in and around the occupational health and wellness community. You get to meet them, you get to be inspired, you get to learn from their stories, and you get to stay up to date with the latest and greatest in manual handling and wellness. So let's crack on. Today we have Irish storyteller, occupational therapist, educator and author Aideen Gallagher on the show, and she's going to help us solve our manual handling problems and help us get it right. So Aideen's based in Sydney, Australia, and she's the founder and co-director of Risk Managed, where she consults as a manual handling advisor and educator to aged care and disability sectors. On top of her skill set, she's also quite the academic with several articles and an extensive education list. I see a Bachelor of Occupational Therapy, Masters of Occupational Health and Safety, Masters in Public Health, and Postgrad Diploma in Academic Practice. Wow, that's a lot in there, in that big brain of yours. So thanks for opening it up today and being part of the Big Brains Trust of Manual Handling. Welcome, Aideen.
Thank you very much, Simone.
Firstly, we're going to dive straight into your career journey. So I'm always curious about people working in manual handling and what's brought them to where they are. So your story seems like an interesting mix between Ireland and Australia and between mental health, occupational therapy and community manual handling. And then in there I saw a mix of university lecturing to OT students. So I'm curious about that, how that's come about and how your background in mental health has shaped what you do in your practice in manual handling.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm always interested in how people ended up in moving and handling, because I can tell you when I was 7, eating my cornflakes, I didn't say to my mom, Mom, I want to observe people being moved all day when they're naked. So, yeah, and it's interesting as well, when I was studying occupational therapy in Trinity in second year in college, one of my roommates was a fourth year physio and she was studying back pain in nurses. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I can't imagine anything more boring. And look at me now, that's what my whole career has been.
That's probably what I thought as a young physio as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, how did I get here? So I qualified in 2001 from a degree in occupational therapy, and I decided to go into mental health OT. And I arrived in Sydney in 2003 after doing a backpack around Australia. And I was looking for a job in mental health. And on the first week of December, I got a call from my dream job in first episode psychosis, dealing with young adults with first episode psychosis, to say that I was not successful at getting the job. And on that same day, I got a call begging me to take up a job because I was on a locum list in moving and handling. And I said to them, I know nothing about this stuff. And they offered to pay me Christmas holidays. And
for a backpacker,
what is it? In the state of mind I was in, I said, okay. And I thought I'd last a week, and I was there 4.5 years.
Wow.
And I guess, you ask how my mental health shaped me. The physical stuff in moving and handling is quite hard, but what I was able to notice that a lot of my colleagues weren't noticing is that every time we're dealing with the moving and handling problem, we're dealing with grief. I knew that from my mental health experience, A, how to identify it, and B, what to do about it without being a grief counsellor. So I was able to address that with my clients, and that's what allowed me to succeed in this area of moving and handling, because I feel able to address the grief, and by addressing the grief, you can better solve the moving and handling problem.
Nice. I know you've written quite a bit about that as well. So a nice segue into your book, which I have here, which I have read. So there's 2 books that you've written, and the first one, The Manual Handling Revolution, how health professionals can achieve creative solutions for people with disabilities and their caregivers. So, what I liked about your book is that it's in these small, neat little chapters, which made it really easy in those bite sized chunks to pick up. I'd read a chapter in a break and let it sit, and then I'd go back, and it was an easy one to pick up and put down and get through. So, tell me, apart from me, who else do you sort of target the book at, and who do you think should be reading it?
Yeah, I think any health professional who solves moving and handling problems. I guess when I went into this moving and handling area, I found that I was sometimes uh, solving, or I guess dealing with mistakes that health professionals had made when they were doing the best that they could in solving moving and handling problems. And I taught in the undergraduate occupational therapy degree for 4 years in the National University of Ireland in Galway. And I was teaching OTs as part of that. And I got to speak to them for 2 hours about the
Yeah.
moving and handling space.
Yeah.
And these
I do
people
those
were leaving the
profession.
university with the badge of expert on the multidisciplinary team in the ones to go to
Yeah.
solve moving and handling
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah,
So
I know exactly what you mean because I've been involved in my local university in the physio undergraduate program, and it's the same in physio as occupational therapy. So just because they graduate with a certificate doesn't mean they're ready to solve these complex problems with complex patients.
absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. And I think they're all doing their best, right? But if you don't know the method of doing it, you create more problems than you solve. And that's what I found myself doing. So it was interesting. You say I have a master's in occupational health and safety. When I did this job for 4 years, I said I'll do a master's in occupational health and safety to learn more about this. But I ended up getting an exemption in the very topic I needed to know more about because I had my OT degree. And I was like, wait a minute, I haven't done that, but
Enough
it's
of
this
that.
massive assumption. And
Yes,
I
agreed.
felt if it's happening to me, then it's happening to
To
everybody
others.
else. And we're never
Great.
going to get any further in this industry. I guess the difference between me and everyone else doing moving and handling is when I took that job in moving and handling, I had two very, very strong mentors who taught me exactly
Yeah.
what to do. Massive
Yeah.
knowledge in home care services in New South Wales. It was there was Anne Adams, there was Kylie Downs. There was a lot of very good therapists around them, all coming together to solve these problems. So I just feel I got A1 education.
Yes. So mentors are fantastic, but how else? What other ideas have you got for people who are new starting health professionals, or even maybe current practicing professionals to get more skills, learn more about equipment prescription, problem solving? What other things are out there? I know you've got a few up your sleeve.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think equipment reps are a great resource for education, and but I think it's the partnership between the health professional and the equipment supplier. Both have knowledge to bring that both together work in partnership to solve a problem. But health professionals sometimes are afraid to talk to a rep because they feel sold to, and reps, I get the sense, feel really disempowered because they probably know more about the equipment than the therapist coming to ask them. So there's kind of a
Yes.
bit of a standoff. But I believe if
Yes.
we provide a way that everyone knows what their role is, everyone's very clear on that.
Yeah.
It's you're doing this, I'm doing that.
Mm.
It can work beautifully together.
Mm. Yeah, so that role differentiation you're saying is, that the equipment reps can explain how the equipment works, but the therapist is to apply that to the situation,
Yeah,
knowing the
yeah, and I talk about it
client's
in my book.
needs.
This idea that I talked to Mike Frey in the UK about this. And he would have said that in the 1980s there was no solution to any problem. Everyone was having back injuries, and suddenly this massive amount of equipment came on the
Mm.
scene, and suddenly
Mm.
we've got this equipment monster. That there's so many options out there that therapists don't have an idea where to go.
Yeah.
So what happens is that a rep will show a product and they'll start to tell the therapist why it's a great product.
Mm-hmm.
The therapist just needs to know how to use it. It's the therapist's role to give objective evaluation to that product. and they want to shut off the sales of the benefits of it, that's up to them to determine in terms of their client. So that's where I created this model that how do health professionals and equipment suppliers work together. If the equipment supplier comes and just shows competence, their job is to show how to use the equipment. So the health professional has got competence. Then they step back and they allow the health professional to come to their own conclusion of the benefits of the equipment, because that's the health professional's job.
Yes, that I like the way you define those two roles and how they can work together, because really it should be, we need them, they need us. We should be able to get this right to get the best outcomes.
Yes, yeah, and everyone wants the same thing.
Yes.
An equipment rep wants to sell their product. Their product will not sell again unless it meaningfully solves a problem. Yes. They don't want the wrong product solving the wrong problem because the product looks terrible. Yeah. So everyone wants the same thing, but there seems to be a breakdown in trust.
Yes.
Between the two parties.
Yes, and it did. I remember when I first entered the manual handling space, it took me a while to figure out and navigate that space, but definitely the more I've dived in and trusted the suppliers, the more confident I've got in my prescription as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other ways for professional development in the manual handling space? What else do you do?
I guess.
What else would you recommend first?
The Australian sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, what would you recommend for new people rather than what do you do? What
okay, I guess. I mean, I'd find a good mentor, right? I think this is what a lot of the students used to do. People assume you've got to go and read loads of research articles to learn, right? But learning is a community. And so you go to the person who's read the research articles for them to tell you and help you interpret them until you learn how to do it yourself. Yes. So, if I was to look up overhead hoists now on a journal list, I'll get so many articles, I won't even know where to start. Yeah. And so if a new grad is getting that, they get overwhelmed and disengaged from the activity. Just get a really good course to help you from the beginning to learn how to do that. Learn the basics of the equipment, separate from the equipment reps, because you need to have the language to be able to know what you're asking for, know what you're talking about. There is systems. This is all, I used to love maths in school and physics. I never got to study physics, but I always had an interest in it. Equipment and moving and handling is all physics.
It's not too late to go back and study physics, Aideen. Just, add that to your list of qualifications.
I'm looking forward to when my son is in high school, because he might do physics and I can just kind of read the book. But it's all physics. And so just learning that physics from somebody who can decode that for you, that's what I would advise. And, just look for some courses out there to help you to do that.
And you started saying something about the Australian Association of Manual Handling of People.
Yeah, they have a conference that is really good. There's some, I remember talking to friends and they said, what did you do last week? And I said, I spent 3 days at a moving and handling conference for people with disabilities. And I was like, they were like, could you talk about that for 3 days?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. And it's quite nice to go to a conference like that where everyone is on the same page as you with the same interest. That's exceptionally powerful. And you learn so much there by learning from people who are at a very high level in their game on that, and that's very powerful as well. So that's another great group to get involved in.
Can you tell me about some of the common mistakes or issues that you see with prescription of equipment, and have you got any examples of like really juicy, doozy things that you saw go wrong? People love those.
I guess I'll give you a basic one first on just overhead hoists, floor base hoists that I see all the time, just in like, what are the basic problems that people, problems I see. There is so many overhead hoists out in the market, floor base hoists, excuse me. There is an assumption that every hoist is the same. And so a hoist is put in place it's a little bit hard to do. It solves what I call the load problem, but doesn't solve the task demand problem. There's too many little bits to it because the hoist is wrong. And suddenly we get a second care worker in place because it's too bitty and hard. But if they got the right hoist in place that took the task demands down, therefore it now becomes a one worker routine. So that's one of the biggest mistakes I see all the time. And I started running workshops on this in 2007. And I thought, I kind of would say this and nobody would listen. I'm delivering one on Friday again and it's full. I cannot believe how people still don't know this basic stuff.
And this is this your Smart Care for Health Professionals course?
Yes. Yeah. This is an 18-week course for health professionals that we go through
Once a week, there's
this
a
prescription
webinar.
use and justification of all the equipment that you can use in moving and handling in terms of categories of equipment.
Sounds fantastic. I'm going to put a few links in the show notes for listeners, things like your website and your courses and where to find your book and your research and things like that. So that will be there if people have more questions about that.
But you asked me about a doozy.
Yes, please.
It's just it's interesting. Whenever I see a case, and you go in and you see something that's strange, you can never assume, because you always have to understand the why someone has done something, because there could be a very, very genuine reason why they have done something. But I saw an overhead hoist recently. I don't know how much was spent on this. I think it could have been upward on $25,000, maybe more, because there was a track going into the bathroom and two cutouts from the bedroom and then into the bathroom. But the interesting part of this is that this was two people in a double bed, and the track went up. The person went up on the inward side of the bed. They had to be hoisted over the second person in the bed to go to a track, and then the track went out into the bathroom. So, I was like, how do I describe this in my report? And I described it as Parramatta Road. It's like this traffic jam.
Is that a Sydney thing? Do you have to live in Sydney to know what Parramatta Road is like?
Parramatta Road, I don't know. It's not a very good road to be on. If you're stuck on Parramatta Road, you may never get off it. These people needed the M1. And the really frustrating thing about it is the M1 is very possible in this environment if they just put in an XY system that the person could go diagonal out. And this is a really interesting thing, the mistake I see making. People don't do the basics of an activity analysis, right? It is the basics. You got to do the journey of what the person goes through, every single routine they have to go to, every single transfer they do across their day, from when they get up in the morning to the evening. Once you know that, then you look at what can move to the hoist and what the hoist needs to move to. And in this situation, yes, this is a heavy client, and yes, the shower commode chair is hard to move. But if we start getting efficient by pivoting the chair is actually very easy to move, and we don't need this big snake of a into the bathroom that is causing all these problems, because once it's got a turntable, it keeps breaking down.
Yeah.
So now these two clients have two floor-based hoists sitting in the office in case.
Wow.
Yeah.
An expensive mistake.
And so these aren't being used. There's no batteries on them, so the batteries go, and suddenly the floor-based hoists.
On it goes.
So
it's just so important, isn't it, to get it right? Like the expense plus the other things around quality of life and the impacts that flow on from there.
Yeah, because now these people have to go back to the NDIS to argue why $25,000, maybe $30,000 didn't solve their problem, and and that's an issue.
Definitely.
Haynes Medical Australia are innately curious, solution-focused, and always keen to share expert insights on keeping staff and patients safe. That's why today's Manual Handling Collective podcast is proudly brought to you by Haynes Medical Australia.
In your book also, I liked your creative risk management model. So I'd be really interested in your explanation of how that's different to what people know as the, OHS risk management model, and why the creative part. How does that look?
I guess, the question is, where did that come from, I guess, first. And, I've got a background in mental health. And just to explain, I used to lecture in mental health, and I used to lecture on risk assessment. And risk assessment, helps you to get rid of danger. That is the goal of it, to eradicate danger, to make things as safe as possible. And in a mental health context, we did that by admitting people to hospital until they got well, okay? And then they were discharged into the community. So that's going from danger to safety. But when the people go out into the community, they've got to go from safety to life. So they've got to start taking risks. So in mental health, what they do is they use risk assessment to verify what risks you can take.
In the other direction,
right?
Yeah.
In
rather
the other
than
direction.
OHS is taking away the risk,
It's taking away the risk. And I know we're talking about different stuff here, but for me, yes, safety is always important. You never compromise that. But sometimes we're so stuck on being afraid of deviation from safety that we never look at kind of the efficiency bit. And, the brakes on the hoist is a really big example of that.
Brakes on, brakes off.
It's a debate that we get all the time, and it's really interesting. When I ask, do brakes go on or off the hoist, people assume that is a safety question. Yep. It's not a safety question, because the hoist is technically safe as an item in itself. If it's, if it's on a slope, it's going to move off to the side. But who does transfers on a slope? It's usually on level ground. So people make this decision about brakes on hoist or not based on safety. But if you reframe that, right, we have to make things safe. And, I ask participants of the workshop, what is your reason for putting brakes on the hoist? And they're all afraid of this hoist tipping, right? That's the reason why they're so afraid of it tipping. And I remember we do a workshop where we try this out. And I remember one OT sitting in the corner of my workshop saying, I cannot look because I'm so afraid of what's going to happen now. I cannot be a part of this, which just shows this fear we have of moving and handling, which stops us from exploring what would happen if. And what's really interesting, when I started working in moving and handling, I said in that interview on the 3rd of December, 2003, I have never seen a hoist before. Okay, I have no idea. Are you sure you want to hire me? I know nothing about these. And they're like, yes, we want to hire you, because there was no one else to do it. I was just an OT with a pulse, right? And so people would say to me, oh, brakes on the hoist. And I could never remember. So what I had to do is I had to go into the training room and go, what would happen if? I need to understand why brakes on the hoist or not on the hoist. So I started looking at what happens if you put the brakes on the hoist, off the chair, on the hoist, on everything, off everything, in a safe
Controlled.
Training environment. So you start getting to know the physics of equipment. And then I realized this is not about safety at all. This is about positioning. Positioning from the front versus positioning on the back versus a chair that's light versus heavy. And suddenly when you start exploring something and using risk management to go, let's give something a go, but safety is let's control that nothing bad can happen, but let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Asking that question, let's see what happens. We'll do it in a controlled environment. What can happen, but at least we'll know we're wrong,
Yeah,
and that's
the way to innovate as well, is just to push those boundaries a little bit and see what's at the edge.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. That is correct. That's the innovation. But I think as health professionals, we're just conditioned into this conservative risk management. That is important when the client is in front of you. Yes, you cannot take risks that are negligent, right? But in a training environment where everything is controlled, let's give it a go. How do people fall out of slings?
Yeah.
Let's give it a go in training. Let's see what happens if you tip forward. And, what can happen somebody, right? You know, and this is the things we're afraid to explore, that I feel that we need to explore, so that we go, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
So I don't have to remember this rule. I get it because I see it. I get it because I felt it.
Yeah.
So that's what we do a lot in the workshops.
Yeah.
What would happen if we put the sling on upside down?
Yeah.
Like, what would happen if, you know? And then everyone goes, oh, I get it now. But they're just all, because that's what they're afraid of.
Yeah.
You know, they're afraid of using the wrong sling with the hoist, but they don't know what it looks like when that happens. And then when you see it, you go, oh my gosh, now I get it.
Sounds like a great fun workshop. My other question I've got for you here is about your second book. So can you tell us a little bit about it? I know it's called Smart Care, one word, and the subtitles are how in-home care providers can mitigate risk, maximize their workforce, and deliver quality care. And you co-authored that with your co-director at Risk Managed, Emma Small, another occupational therapist.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so it seems like the second book's directed more towards in-home carers, the first one more towards health professionals. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
So this is CEOs of in-home care providers, kind of that C-suite.
And when is it out? And tell us a little bit about it. What can we look forward to?
It just went to print yesterday. It just, so it should be out in the next 4 to 6 weeks. It should be in our hands, which is really exciting.
How long does a book take from writing the first page to getting it to the shelf?
Don't ask. 2020 just went out the window. It was supposed to be launched March last year, but 2020 just clearly 2020.
2020, let's just move on.
But if you took out 2020, right? If you just pretend that didn't happen, it was just over a year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and you think you're finished, and then you realize you ain't finished at all. But yeah, we got there. It's an endurance sport.
Tell us a bit about it.
So I guess, why did we call it Smart Care? I really love the initiative in the UK, Single-Handed Care. I think it's really clever in what it has conveyed and what it has tried to solve. I think sometimes it's misinterpreted for something that it isn't, which is about trying to make care a one worker routine when that isn't always possible. And I think the single-handed care philosophy acknowledges that, right? But just when someone hears it for the first time with different agendas, they can disengage from it because it communicates something that it isn't. So we were kind of going, like that has been in the UK for 10 years. And how do we change the way that care is done in Australia? And we felt that going down that same route, we're going to be where the UK is in 10 years' time. So how can we make it different? And Emma and I spent about, I would say, 2 years listening to people about what they want, listening to clients, listening to in-home care providers, listening to carers, listening to what all the policymakers were saying. And everyone wants a care routine that is safe for everybody, that's efficient in the use of resources, and that is quality. And so we were kind of going, what word conveys those three things, which single-handed care does, right? But we need a word that conveys that so everybody has something to gain from it. And everybody wants a smart routine. Everyone wants something that is smart. That word smart, I felt, could be conveyed. There's something in there for everybody. The question is, why do we target in-home care providers? They're a stakeholder in this, and they can sometimes be the hardest people to get on board with the health and safety agenda. I think we've lost that health and safety battle in some ways because we keep talking about safety. Whereas, and Mike Frey would talk about this as well, is that the health services have moved on to the client-centered agenda at the moment, right? The client has the power, and rightly so. So anything we're talking about safety, the client isn't even in that space. They don't even, they can't get their head around that space. So we need to get their head around that space. So this book talks about the need for the safety of the worker, but we all sell it in terms of what the client has to gain. So because the in-home care provider cares about the client, So we have pushed everything to arguing why health and safety is of benefit to the client and therefore the in-home care provider, and the icing on the cake is the care worker, not the other way around.
Oh, that makes sense. So when did you say it was coming out? It's just when
It's probably,
yeah.
I mean, I thought it'd be out now, but it's going to be another, I'd say 5 weeks.
Okay.
It'll be, I'll have it here, or Emma will have half of them. We're getting half delivered to her, half delivered to me. So both of us can go, it did happen. This wasn't in our head.
Very good. And that will be something people could access from your website, right?
Yes, when we get our website done. Yes, we have to get our website
Give Aideen
updated.
A little while from,
well, you know, yeah, yes.
From now. Excellent. So about May 2021, we'll start having a look, yeah? Would that give you time?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I can commit to that.
Fabulous. So my last question is trying to tap into your big brain about what you think the future of work in this space is going to look like, and what kind of things you'd like to see more of, how we can grow. What are your thoughts around that?
That's a big question.
It is.
I think for me, it's kind of tapping into that relationship between equipment providers and health professionals.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a bit of a disconnect there, and I think we need to relook at the way we're doing that. And an example is conferences.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the conference sphere, we have providers showing their wares out in the exhibition hall,
Mm-hmm.
and the solving of problems happens in the sessions. There is kind of this,
and you move around to different stations, looking at individual piece of equipment separately.
Yes, you just look at it, and a lot of
its own.
OTs don't know what to do with that. They don't know
how to play with it, and
what does that mean? What does this mean? You know, oh, the color is nice. They don't know how to engage with it objectively, so that they come away going, that would solve X problem, and I know why, and I know why it might be different to another solution there. They don't get to compare them.
Yeah, I think the comparing piece would be interesting. If we could play with a few pieces at the same time with someone on the bed and compare and contrast.
And I think and I think the two things need to happen at that. It's a bit like wine tasting. You know, you can't taste wine by itself.
Nothing
the way you taste wine, apparently there's nothing to compare it to, and that's how you taste wine. Is you taste it in comparison. It's the same with the equipment. And it doesn't matter what your comparison is, it just needs to be a comparison. So a little bit like a mini research study. So why don't we, in conferences, flip it, that we have sessions that are involved with solving certain transfer problems, because there's only 8 of them, right? There's only, in the home care environment, there's only 8 transfers that you can possibly do. And again, someone could argue there's more than that, but just in a general day, the general routine everyone does from getting out of bed to going to bed at night, you know, there's 8 transfers that you would do. And why not just tackle each one of them? And someone is convening this with a question for people to answer. That's just one small question, but they use the equipment to see how it answers that question.
Ooh, I like that idea. Well, keep that on your radar, Aideen. I'd love to see that idea come to life at a conference. I'd be very interested.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, let's see. I mean, there's you know, with anything, there could be a reason why that hasn't happened already, right? And it's just about, again, what would that look like? What are the risks with that? And try and mitigate the risk and enhance the positives.
So you've also been to the American Safe Patient Handling Conference, the International Safe Patient Handling Conference in America. How do they do things differently in regards to equipment over there?
Well, I came to speak at that conference about in-home care, and I stood up on the stage to speak about it, and everyone went, "Excuse me?" I was like, "I'm talking about in-home care." "Oh, we don't have that here." So I was just flabbergasted that there is no community.
Really?
There's just, I don't know. I mean, do people with disabilities live in America? There was just no
So just the family members are doing
just the family members are doing it. Yeah. So they thought it was, I got the sense they couldn't even engage with it because it was just so far off what happens at the moment, you know. And it's interesting, you know, I'm Irish, clearly, and I've moved to Australia. And I think when you live in a country that does something well, you always find holes in what you're doing. It's only when you go somewhere else that you realize how well we do things. And yeah, that was a lesson to me in that. It was just, I found that just overwhelming what that might be like.
For families and carers.
Yeah, carers, and just even the health costs, because, you know, like you can't choose to go to the toilet. You just have to go. So if you've got a disability, you have to do it. It's as simple as that. Wow. It's not something that is what I call in the book a need activity of daily living. You can't get away from it. You know, you can. Yeah.
Wow. Well, you have blown my mind today, Aideen. I knew you'd have some good things to share with the manual handling community. So thank you so much for your time. And I love listening to Aideen today with her gorgeous Irish accent. There are so many passionate people in our manual handling community who really motivate me to keep trying to do better. And she's definitely inspired me to, firstly, not waste $30,000 on the wrong equipment, but also to be a bit more open to collaborating with different equipment suppliers. So I hope she's inspired you too. You have been listening to the Manual Handling Collective podcast. If you're only listening through audio, we've also filmed this episode. If you want to see a little extra, see the link in the show notes. Subscribe to stay notified of future episodes. Like, share, comment, and get in touch to hear more of what you want. If you know a guest who'd be a great fit for the show, just let me know.